Welcome back to B&B Movie Reviews. This week, we look for Eddie Murphy's approval, make a choice with M. Night Shyamalan, take one last dance with Mike, and take a trip to the quantum realm. Stay right there. B&B is up next.
So do you hang out in the hood all the time, or do you just come up here for our food and women?
It's a valid question.
It is. I guess I'm one of those guys who kind of goes wherever.
You go wherever?
Yeah, kind of like a chameleon in that way, I guess. You know, I'll pop into Marathon and grab a hoodie and some socks, or, you know, go play ball at Langston Hughes Park if there's a good run going. And Roscoe's is obviously one of my go-tos. I mean, the Carol C special, come on, where's our waiter? I'm gonna go see if the wait person's here because I feel like we should get it, because I think you guys deserve more than...
Jonah Hill nervously tries to impress the parents of his new girlfriend, but Eddie Murphy and Nia Long are not impressed, and neither are we, in this lazy interpretation of Guess Who's Coming to Dinner.
Ooh, right out the gate, Brian.
Yeah, so spoiler alert, Brad. This movie sucks. Yeah, I did not like this movie at all. I mean, okay, let's take a step back.
I mean, it's like, don't make me be devil's advocate here, Brian. You know, I don't want to defend this movie because, well, I can't.
Come on my side, Brad. Come on my side. No, just to kind of give a couple of points that I actually genuinely did like about the movie. I thought that the chemistry between Jonah Hill and Lauren London was really nice, and I really kind of bought into their love story.
Okay.
It's true. I do.
Okay.
Really.
All right. I'm glad you did.
But unfortunately, that's not really what the movie is about. So we don't really get a lot of that for us to really kind of engage and like these characters that populate this movie.
Yeah, I think one, it's not funny, and that's probably its biggest crime.
Yeah.
I think its racial politics are also pretty ancient.
Very.
They don't feel very contemporary.
Yeah.
I think there are people in the film that are enjoyable to watch.
Yeah.
You know, Jonah Hill, you know, he has an energy that is watchable. Eddie Murphy,
Yeah.
very watchable. Julie Louis-Dreyfus, very watchable. I just don't think they're...
It's honestly, for me, it comes to Kenya Barris. I mean, Kenya Barris has this style of comedy that doesn't really work for me. He likes to really kind of stay in the awkwardness of the moment, and for me, that doesn't really work when you're trying to tell a broad comedy. And he really, and you look at his shows, he's the creator of Blackish, which was a very successful show, but he also did this other show on Netflix called #BlackAF, which it pretty much kind of falls in line with this movie as far as like that awkwardness and the culture clash and really kind of dealing with like race and biracial and things of that nature. And I don't know, it's just something about Kenya Barris, his comedy just does not work, where it just falls flat at every turn.
I appreciate anti-comedy. I appreciate embracing awkwardness. And it's not like these setups are totally alien. Like, I recognize the truth to them, and all that Barris is doing is exaggerating those truths.
Yeah.
But in those exaggerations, again, there's no real comedy, and the commentary doesn't feel fresh in any way.
No, and I like all of these actors. I mean...
Yes, and there's so many actors in this movie.
Yeah,
They crammed the runtime with people you know.
Yeah, and you mentioned, and I mean, of course, Julie Louis-Dreyfus, Eddie Murphy, Lauren London, Jonah Hill, David Duchovny is also in this movie. There's a running joke with Exhibit that just... they running into the ground.
It's brutal. Every time, and again, I love David Duchovny.
Yeah.
You know, X-Files meant so much to me as a youth.
Oh, yeah.
Californication, love it. He's atrocious in this film.
Yeah, very much so. He looks like he's sleepwalking through this movie.
I don't want to, I don't know what's going on in his life, so I don't want to say, oh, he was sleepwalking through it, because he very well could be, busting his hump.
And that could have been direction as well.
It's direction, but I think this film's biggest problem is the script.
Yeah.
I just don't think there's anything there.
No, there's really not much there. And you got the actors trying to do a lot of the heavy lifting of this movie. Jonah Hill. I like Jonah Hill's nervous tick energy with his comedy. He does that a lot in his movies, and I think he's really good at it. And I think that plays well against Eddie Murphy and his stern father and the way he's kind of portraying that character.
It's so weird though when his great dream in life is to become a podcaster, and they show these sequences where he's speaking to the culture.
Oh yeah.
And you're like, well, that show, that podcast, that's not going to go anywhere.
No.
The ending just breaks all kind of credibility.
Yeah, and it kind of
in every way.
Yeah, and it comes out of nowhere. It's like they try to wrap it up so quickly. Yeah.
It's I think when you get to the ending of this film, and I don't want to spoil it for people who are gonna choose this movie on a Saturday night on Netflix.
Yeah.
But you get to that ending and you just kind of throw your hands up.
Pretty much. What's your rating for this?
Oh, it's a B-. I did not like it.
Yeah, same. B- for me. So 2 thumbs way down. So those are our thoughts on You People. So when we come back, M. Night Shyamalan, we'll take a knock at the cabin. Stay right there.
If you need to do something to feel okay to drive, you're not okay to drive. Don't drive buzzed.
You have to understand that we cannot and will not choose who is to be sacrificed for you. And just as importantly, we cannot act for you. You cannot kill yourselves.
We're not choosing anyone. We're not sacrificing anyone. Not now, not ever.
Even if it means the death of everyone else in the world.
Yes. Even if I believe the world was at stake, which I don't, that's what it means. I would watch the world die 100 times over before having to...
Christ. Waste of time. They're never gonna choose to do this. And I don't blame them.
Dave Bautista's Leonard explains the sacrifice that has to be made to Andrew and his family in order to prevent the looming apocalypse that asks the question, what would you choose in M. Night Shyamalan's latest thriller, Knock at the Cabin? Brian.
Yes.
Before we talk about Knock at the Cabin specifically, what's your relationship with M. Night Shyamalan movies?
I mean, when he first came out the gate in '99 with The Sixth Sense, that's a movie that I really, even though I kind of predicted the ending with everything, but I thought it was a well-crafted. I know.
You're so smart.
I don't want to be that guy.
You are that guy.
But his first 3 movies I really enjoyed. Unbreakable, Signs, I thought were just great. But he started to kind of dip with The Village. And then it seemed like he started to get a little full of himself as a filmmaker and being really defensive towards the media, and his ego, I think, took a little bit over with movies like Lady in the Water and The Happening. But then it felt like he kind of humbled himself, with the visit. And
he started financing his films.
Yeah, and then Split really brought me back into loving what he was doing. And even though since Split, I haven't really been on board with a lot of his movies, I thought Glass was a misfire. And even Old, I had some issues with, but I actually like Old more than others. And this movie kind of falls in the middle of that for me.
I think this film suffers in ways that other M. Night Shyamalan films don't suffer. And it's, for me, still about the ending of Knock at the Cabin, but my problems with the ending of Knock at the Cabin are not necessarily the same problems I had with the endings of Old or The Village.
The Village, yeah.
It's less about the twist and it's more about what is the meaning behind the climax of Knock at the Cabin.
And I like that. It feels like, I don't want to say there's a maturity to his filmmaking and directing when it comes to that, because sometimes I think people can get caught in the trappings of, you're known for the twist ending, so I gotta keep delivering on the twist ending. But it seems like he's kind of gotten away from that, or has kind of twist how people perceive his twist endings. So I kind of like how he's progressed in the way he's starting to tell his stories.
I think this ending is more aligned with an ending like you get with Unbreakable. But you talk about the maturity of him as a filmmaker. I do think that for 2/3 of this film, it's absolutely killer. And his direction is amazing. His framing in this movie is nuts.
The way he moves the camera, his framing, the way he lights the sets and to tell the story, especially what's going on in Knock at the Cabin, as far as like the reveals.
And it's such a compelling narrative.
It
and
is.
It just goes from the first frame. Like, it throws you right into the tension of the setup. I mean, there really is very little setup in this movie.
Very little.
And I super appreciated that. And I was engaged all the way until the last 15 minutes when the movie totally loses me.
Yeah, I think the ending loses me as well, because, and like we talked about at the beginning of this segment, it's all about the choice that you make.
And there aren't a lot of options, right? So
There
people
isn't.
come to your
There
cabin
isn't.
and they say you have to sacrifice someone in your family to prevent the apocalypse.
Yeah.
There's only two outcomes, right? There's either an apocalypse or there's not an apocalypse. And so that binary is not actually interesting to me. It's what you do with the reveal. Like, so if it's one of those two things, you then have to add another layer of meaning onto it.
Okay.
And in my opinion, it's based on a book by Paul Tremblay. The book's ending way more satisfying and filled with meaning than what M. Night Shyamalan chooses to do.
Yeah.
And this is the second movie in a row where he has adapted a work and totally butchered the work's climax. And I find that so aggravating.
Yeah, it's really frustrating. And another thing about the ending as well is that I think tonally, he kind of undercuts that moment. Even though the ending doesn't work in and of itself, I think he kind of undercuts that moment tonally with what, and I don't want to give too much away, but there's like a song that plays in the trailer and that has like meaning in the movie as well.
Yeah.
And the way that I think he tries to use that to try to, I guess, bring some sense of the to show us some sense of that family, but the way that he plays it in the context of the movie at the end of it, to me, I think it undercuts the tone of what those final scenes were trying to go for.
You know, M. Night Shyamalan's a person of faith, and it reads very well in all of his movies. But I think it's really interesting to pair this film with Signs, to see really what he is addressing with the endings of those two films. And you can tell that, like, I mean, he hasn't changed too much on his point of view.
No.
But I don't know if his point of view works in Knock at the Cabin for what that story is.
I agree. But what's your rating? What's your score for this one?
The first 2/3, definitely a B+. The ending is a B-. And so does the failing of the ending outweigh the positivity of the first 2/3? I think it does. I give it a B-.
B-?
I do.
I'm probably right there with you. It's a high B- for me. I wanted to like this movie a lot more. Very interesting the first 2/3, but because of that ending, I have to agree. Unfortunately,
Shyamalan also needs to learn how to edit and direct news footage.
Oh God, yeah, he really does. So yeah, M. Night, get on that. So when we come back, we'll take that last dance with Mike. Stay right there.
Each year, there are more than a dozen significant tropical and winter storms that threaten the East Coast. So chances are there will be more hurricanes and blizzards near here again. And between school, sports, and social lives, chances are you won't be with your kids when it happens. Will they know what to do? Ready.gov/kids has all the educational tools and information to make the conversation easy. When the time comes, chances are they'll feel prepared, not scared. So talk with your family today.
What did you want before Miami?
I just wanted to escape my life. Do you like bartending?
It's not really what I do.
What is it that you really do? But then you came along and gave me this unexpected, magical moment that made me remember who I really was.
Mike gives Salma Hayek's Maxandra a magical night that reminds her of who she really was and inspires her to put on a play in London that will ignite the passion back into the lives of the people who have lost the desire. Will Mike and Maxandra end up together? Will her play be a success? Do we really care? All these burning questions get flamed out in this boring, uninspired sequel. Yeah,
you're bringing a lot of negative energy to this show today, Brian.
I mean, look, man, this movie, it didn't work. It didn't work for me. I guess another spoiler alert. But Magic Mike, I mean, the second movie, Double XL, was such a fun movie that really kind of focused on the friendship of those guys. And unfortunately,
it's a bromance. That movie is a bromance. You come away from that film, you love everyone involved. You can't wait to see what they're going to do next. You're pumped for a sequel.
Yeah, and then like you make this sequel and you basically just get rid of the cast that really kind of made that movie what it was, and then you tell this singular story of Mike where, you know, he's a bartender now, and then he meets Salma Hayek's character, and she recruits him to come to London to put on this play.
I will say that the first act of the film worked really well for me. That party sequence I enjoyed a lot, which then climaxes with the most intense dance number of the entire film. That lap dance that Mike gives to Salma Hayek.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a sex scene with all the clothes that remains on, and it's one of the hottest things I've ever seen in a movie.
Yeah, and that's supposed to carry us through the entire supposed love story between Salma Hayek and Channing Tatum, but I don't even buy into that love story because as the movie progresses, like we get further and further away from that sequence that we have at the beginning of the movie.
You can understand the lust side of things. You can understand the infatuation side of things.
Yeah.
But the romantic story between the two of them never really coalesces. And by the end, after the big number, like the investment that we have in their relationship, that I had in their relationship, was very, very small. And if that doesn't work for you, then the movie's not going to work for you. But I do think that there are moments in this film that make it worth watching. One being the lap dance that starts the film off. But also, you know, there's a really great montage sequence. We don't get the friends from Double XL.
Yeah.
And we have a Zoom call with them, and
which
it's
is
an embarrassing Zoom call.
It's a poor choice from Soderbergh as a director to bring them back in a Zoom call.
And like it feels like a legit live Zoom call, you know, because you know, Richie like locks up at one point.
And you're looking at the screen and you're like, is he just checked out, or is his screen froze, or like what's happening here? It's weird.
But you have like the montage where they're recruiting new dancers. That sequence is really, really fun. It's like a Rocky moment. I like all that. Unfortunately, the screenplay chooses not to give any character to any of the other dancers. And it just highlights what was so good about Magic Mike Double XL.
For me, this movie feels very experimental. And Soderbergh likes to experiment with his films. One thing I notice about it is like there's a lot of diegetic sound, which means like it's all the music and all the sound we hear is everything that's happening within the world of the movie. So there's no real score to the movie except the music that we hear inside of the film, and then that kind of carries over into some montage sequences. But I think that does a disservice because in a movie like this, you need that energy.
You need the style. You're lacking the style.
And there's no style and there's no energy.
They also decide to include narration from Salma Hayek's daughter.
Yeah.
And the narration is so earnest. And it's, like dance will save the planet.
Yeah.
And it felt very Step Up to me. And I was like, okay, all right. I kind of like this sort of pomp and circumstance.
But where it kind of ends?
But then and they're putting on this stage show that is supposed to be this groundbreaking, hypersexual experience. And it feels like something I've seen in Vegas. It feels like the Magic Mike stage show.
It seems like that's pretty much what it was. What's your rating for this?
B-.
I agree. This show is going all.
Oh, I hope the next movie's a good one.
Yeah, we'll see. Because it's a B- for me too. It's just it didn't work. So yeah, those are our thoughts on Magic Mike's Last Dance. So when we come back, we go down to the quantum realm with Scott Lang. Stay right there.
Children are spending more time at home. Teachers, parents, neighbors, and friends, it's up to you to keep them safe. Now, more than ever, it's important to stay connected. By phone, video chat, and social media. If you have concerns or see changes in a child, be there for them. Ask questions. Seek help. Report suspected child abuse or neglect.
You're an interesting man. Scott Lang.
I don't know who you are, but you've made a big mistake, okay? I'm an Avenger. I've called the other Avengers.
You're an Avenger. Have I killed you before?
What?
They all blur together after a while.
Scott Lang has met his match as Kang the Conqueror is introduced as the next big villain of the Marvel Cinematic Universe in Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. Brian, Kang is here. Jonathan Majors.
Jonathan Majors, exciting actor to watch.
Yes.
Very exciting actor to watch. So, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania.
Okay, all right. I'm already okay. I see where this show is going.
What?
You're not loving Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania.
It's okay. I didn't jive with it the way that I wanted to kind of jive with this movie.
But is it because you were expecting something more than an Ant-Man and the Wasp movie? If you look at the previous two Peyton Reed films, does this really stray that far from what we had already seen in this corner of the MCU?
Yeah, I think so.
You think it's worse than Ant-Man and the Wasp and the first Ant-Man?
For me, if I was to rate all three of the Ant-Man movies, this is number 3 for me. And I do think it kind of strays because, and Peyton Reed, the director, has talked about this as where the first two movies have felt like palate cleansers, the dessert after the main course.
They're pretty isolated from
and
the
kind of
greater
isolated.
story.
And this movie, he kind of wanted to have more of an impact on the overall MCU. And I get that, but to me, what I think didn't really work is because I think it took away, even though at the core of Ant-Man and the Wasp, and the core of all three of these movies has always been the relationship between Scott and his daughter Cassie.
Yeah.
And that is still relevant and there in this movie.
Because I think it is about the relationships of these characters. And I think one of the things that the film does well is it separates Scott and Hope, and it pairs Hope with her parents.
Yeah.
And we get a lot of time with Janet Van Dyne and Hank Pym and Hope. And I liked that time together. And I thought it was really sweet to watch Hope experiencing her parents' romantic life now that they are reunited. And it's awkward, it's funny, but it's also pretty darn sweet. I liked all that stuff a lot.
The way everything with Hope, what I enjoyed was more about the relationship between her and Janet, because Janet has been keeping secrets away because of her time that she spent in the quantum realm. So there is kind of a bit of a divide or a separation between, a separation in communication between mother and daughter. And I like that when we get down into the quantum realm that it kind of puts them together, so now that Hope can kind of see what Janet has been fearful of and what she's been keeping away from her this whole time.
When you watch all the Ant-Man films back to back, you realize that this is really a saga about parenthood and childhood. And it is parents constantly failing their children, you know, Hank with Hope, you know, Scott with Cassie, and then reconnecting and understanding why your parents did what they did. And also understanding why your children are behaving the way that they are. You know?
So I mean, and I like the fact that they tried to keep that through line. Just for me in this movie, it just felt a little jarring because I just don't feel like they gave enough time to that.
There's a lot going on in this film, probably too much for a 2-hour movie. You know, the civil war that is happening inside the quantum realm is really just window dressing. And I wish we had a better understanding of that conflict and those characters in the revolution against Kang. I think we do get some good stuff with Kang, and it does set up Kang as a serious threat within the MCU, but maybe not in the way we were anticipating when we watched the trailers.
And I think that was part of my issue too, and maybe because, again, I was coming to it thinking I knew what this character was going to be or how he was going to be a threat in the overall MCU. So, I don't know, I think some of that stuff with Kang didn't really sit with me, or it didn't really work for me as well, because I just don't see how that is going to kind of move forward with him being a bigger threat.
I feel like in earlier phases of the MCU, they took their time establishing, or not even establishing, revealing the wackiness of these comic book characters. And I was really surprised that they put they hit the pedal to the metal with Kang and everything that's going on with Kang. You know, we have a little bit of an understanding of it through Loki and the season finale of that. I don't necessarily want to spoil what happens in the last episode of Loki, but it really does inform what happens in Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, especially the post-credit stingers, or the mid-credit stinger and the end credit stinger.
I like those post-credit scenes in concept, the execution, and how the look. I don't want to say they didn't really work for me, just because it looked and felt a little cheap to me. But I
loved them. They're like two of my favorite stingers that we've gotten in all of the MCU.
Yeah, but I'm curious, and I'm still on board. But I gotta say that the MCU, my excitement is starting to.
Man, I am the opposite.
I know.
Like, Jonathan Majors is so fierce in this film. But he gets to play a wide range of emotions. And
he does.
We went into this going like, oh, Kang is the threat. And, in that clip we showed, he is talking to Ant-Man. He's like, which Avenger are you? I've killed so many of you. And he's not as badass as we think he is. And that's what's kind of exciting about him. There is a fallibility to him that is appealing. And
I'll be curious
where he goes after this film, because of the end of this film.
I'll be curious to see where that goes. What's your rating for this?
I had a great time with it. I think it's not the best MCU movie by any means. It's probably somewhere there in the middle, hanging out with the rest of the Ant-Man films. As an Ant-Man movie, though, B+.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately for me, it's like straight down the middle. There's things that I liked, but there's a lot of things that don't work. So I'm gonna go a high B-. So yeah, this show for me has been
sad parade.
I know. So
I'm glad I found some joy.
There you go. You found some at the end. Yeah. So those are our thoughts on Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. So to recap what we have reviewed today, you people, we give to B minuses for that. Knock at the Cabin, unfortunately the endings didn't work, so that's a B minus as well. Magic Mike's Last Dance, that one is a B minus for us. And we split on Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. Brad gives that a B plus. Unfortunately for me, it is a B minus. So, thank you for joining us on this latest episode of B&B Movie Reviews. Come be a part of the conversation. If you have questions and suggestions, feel free to email us at bnbmoviereviews@gmail.com. And with that, we'll see you at the movies.